everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on part 26 of our journey through Heaven Official's Blessing. We are doing chapters 89 and 90 today. I debated on what to do, honestly, because I know that I'm taking a very long and arduous journey through Heaven Official's Blessing. And so I put on Discord, I put three options on the Patreon Discord. I said, okay, do you think I should do option A, which is what we're doing tonight, which is reading chapters 89 and 90, pages 237 through 262 of this edition? Or B, do you think I should do chapters 89 through 91 and the next week do chapters 92 through 94? Or option C is to try to do 89 through 92 in one big go. And everyone in the Discord was super nice and kind. And they were like, yeah, you got 2 hours out of 2 chapters last week. You might want to just stick with 2. And so I was like, okay, fair enough for me. But that's kind of my plans for the next several weeks, is to do 89, 90 tonight. And then next week do chapters 91, 92. And then possibly do 93 and 94 the following week, or I'll put it up to Patreon and see if they want me to combine those 4. But honestly, 30 pages is about as much as I need to go through because I get like 2 hours of discussion out of 30 pages. So that's where we're at. But yeah, so we're done with Arc 2. Arc 2's done. I went back and looked and we started Arc 1 like I think it was around part 19. So we spent like a good, 2 months on this arc here. But yeah, so we basically have ended Arc 2 and now we're in Arc 3. However long that one's going to take, I don't know. We've got 8 volumes. We'll just have to see. I don't want to know, obviously. But I'm really excited because we're going back to the present. This arc's been really dark. I feel like everybody in the comments was like, we're glad you read it. We're glad we got to see you read it. Now we're glad we're leaving. Because, yeah, the whole thing with Shanla is just... it is a trip. And I honestly, looking back to volume 1, I now get why Xie Lian is so tore up about Bai Wusheng, why he is so frazzled about the human face disease, because these last several chapters have been pretty nightmarish. It's a pretty bad flashback, and we're not even to the end of things. Like, all we did was leave before things really got bad. We left when things started to get really bad, right? We left Xie Lian going back to the Heavenly Realm right as the pagoda falls, right as Bai Wusheng's just like, done my thing, and right as Yong'an has begun to have its victory over Shanla. We left right when things were getting really bad, but weren't at their worst yet. So that's a bit concerning, right? Because we've not truly seen the worst of the worst, right? So I had a cold last week. It's been like, basically a respiratory infection that it's just got to go through my system. So I'm at that point where like, I've just got some stuffy nose and a really dry throat that gets scratchy and makes me want to cough. That's where I'm at. So if I cough during this reaction, I'm very sorry. It's just, I'm going to nurse this cold until it leaves. Could be worse. Could be the human face disease. The creepiest thing ever. Anime Annie, we have got some comments to go through, but Anime Annie was like, you know what? It's creepy enough when there's a face growing on your own body, but then when you find out that face has a conscience, that's when it gets a bit weird. And it's like, yeah, just a wee bit. There's some really crappy horror movies out there right now. I think MXTX could write herself a pretty damn good horror movie that would be pretty terrifying. But I do have some comments before we start this set of chapters for this evening. Parna Chaudhary talked about how Xie Lian might have had a bit of a superiority complex. And they use the word arrogant, which I don't really, I would kind of respectfully disagree that I don't think Xie Lian was necessarily arrogant, but I do believe, and maybe he was, but I do believe he did have a bit of a superiority complex, because I like what Parna said, saying that he thought because he was a god, he could fix everything, right? Because he had these divine powers, he was above others. And the reality that Xie Lian has come to realize, especially throughout this flashback, is no, he's not better than anybody else. At the end of the day, despite this upgrade, he's still human, right? He's still a human. And as the Goshi said, to ascend is human, but also is human to fall. So it's really, really sad, right? That Xie Lian had to learn this very valuable lesson in the most horrific way possible, right? But I like that comment a lot, Parna. Thank you. Anime Annie talked about how Mu Qing and Feng Shen, we kind of see both of their ideologies in this last set of chapters. And we see how Mu Qing, maybe he's being the deputy for the glory of it. Maybe he wants Xie Lian to be better than what Xie Lian is. And maybe he actually genuinely likes helping people. I think that could be a big part of it, that he genuinely likes helping people. But then he's just so horrible at communication, it just doesn't work. And Feng Shen likes being loyal to a worthy person. And I think that line, to a worthy person, is pretty important, because there's going to come a point where Feng Shen doesn't believe Xie Lian's a worthy person anymore and he leaves him. So that's pretty interesting to note. But basically, Feng Shen puts Xie Lian on a pedestal, and Mu Qing always questions him and wants him to be better. So they're both on these opposite ends of the spectrum. There's no middle ground, and Xie Lian's just stuck dealing with it. And I thought that it was really, really important. There's another comment that's going to tie into that I'm going to save here for a second. But I also thought it was very interesting how Anime Annie pointed out that the tiny white flower that Hua Chong leaves, or that we think is Hua Chong, that leaves at Xie Lian's feet, it's trampled over and covered in blood, and the stench of the blood overpowers the stench of the flower. I told Anime Annie in the comments that it's kind of like a representation of Hua Chong's ability to protect Xie Lian currently in the flashback, because he's mortal, he's a kid, he doesn't have any power, so he can only do so much. And so that withered, trampled on, blood-soaked flower is a representation of his limitations as a mortal. And then we go to him as a supreme ghost, and he becomes strong enough to protect his man. So it's like, I can't wait to get Hua Chong back in this story. Don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon, but I really can't wait now that we know all that we know about him. And then finally, this ties to the Feng Shen and Mu Qing comment. The longest handle. I love your profile name so much. Warum Brauchi Chinin Canal Zoom Co Momentarum. I know I said it wrong, but it's like it literally takes up like a whole line just to get to that profile name. But basically, I was talking about, the extremes between Feng Shen and Mu Qing, and saying that they're both these two sides of the spectrum, like Anime Annie pointed out. If they could just find a way to compromise, they could help with the conflict. But what happens instead is, because they argue and they don't compromise, then they just end up creating another conflict for Xie Lian to handle. So it ends up doing more bad than good. So I thought those comments were really, really good. I'm super excited to dive into the present and see, what is Xie Lian going to do with Qi Rong? Is he going to kill him? Is he going to stab him? He was really, really mad. And then we flashed back to all this leading up to this. What we going to do? But we're going to find out, right? But we're going to find out what the heck we're going to do on this, right? So let's not waste any more time, shall we? We are going to start Heaven Official's Blessing, chapters 89 and 90. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Book 3, No Paths Are Bound. Chapter 89, The Mid-Autumn Festival, Battling Lanterns on Moon Watch Eve. That could not be any more not what I thought it was going to be going into this chapter. But the lantern part maybe connects to Qi Rong, but not what I expected. Oh. Sparks flew. The blade penetrated deep into the stone floor. And Xie Lian, both his hands gripping the sword, bowed his head and rested his forehead on the hilt. His teeth gritted so hard they might grind to powder in his mouth, though he couldn't do it. Useless trash! What useless trash! I knew you wouldn't dare kill me. No matter how much I ridicule you, no matter how I drag you through the mud, as long as I have a knife on someone else's throat, you can't do anything to me, you useless coward. For what do you need to live for? A god like you. But Xie Lian had already completely calmed down. He looked up, his eyes cold. Don't be too happy too soon. I can't do anything to you. But there will naturally be someone who can. Oh, are you thinking of hugging Junwoo's legs to beg him to help you out again? Dream on. Did he care back then? Oh, we're gonna tie to this! And you still shamelessly follow his lead. Are you really that stupid? He peeled that stately and glamorous God-pleasing costume set off of Qi Rong. He called forth Rui and bound him and threw him aside. You better keep your mouth shut. I'm not afraid of you. You got nothing on me. Then are you afraid of Hua Chong? Oh, and his smile froze! Yeah. Just to give you a heads up, if one of these days I get into a bad mood, maybe I just might hand you over to Hua Chong and have him think of a way to deal with you. So you watch yourself, you hear me? Oh, threaten him with your husband, huh? Oh. Hearing this, Qi Rong couldn't laugh anymore. He said, terrifying, what the F, you're vicious! I can't believe you'd come up with something like that. Why not just hand me over to Long Chuan Chu? Hua Chong is the last person he wants to face. Xie Lian knelt on the ground and used his hands to pick up the small, coarse granules from the ground and from under the coffin one by one. Truthfully, he wouldn't be handing Qi Rong to the heavenly court for the time being, the reason being Long Chuan Chu. If he handed Qi Rong over and Long Chuan Chu learned of Qi Rong's whereabouts, he would charge immediately with a sword to kill him. Should he be killed? A headache. If he was killed, then what's next? Another headache. Thus, it wasn't wise to hand Qi Rong over to the heavenly court at the moment. But this is dangerous because you're not handing over a supreme ghost. All things considered, requesting Hua Chong's help seemed like a pretty good idea. But really, he was only using Hua Chong's name to scare Qi Rong a bit. After all, he'd already troubled Hua Chong too many times. And every time something happened, he'd think of Hua Chong first. It'd almost feel like he was being overly familiar. Well, just using his name to scare Qi Rong made Xie Lian feel rather embarrassed. He turned and spat some blood-laced spit in a different direction, and the child reached out to pathetically pat his forehead. Dad, are you okay? Does it hurt? Qi Rong really seemed to enjoy this game of father and son and responded derisively, my good son, Daddy's okay. The rims around Xie Lian's eyes were red as he picked up those granules, and he placed them with utmost care into the God-pleasing costume. That child quietly crawled over and helped Xie Lian pick them up too. Oh, he saw those little hands and looked up at him, and the child said in a small voice, Gege, won't you stop beating up my dad? Let us go. I won't steal from you again. Oh, what's your name, little one? Goozy. Xie Lian had finished collecting all the ashes and wrapped them in the layers of that costume, tying it up neatly before placing the bundle within the coffin anew, closing the cover. He then slowly replied, Goozy, the one over there is not your dad, but someone else. He's been possessed. He's currently a bad guy. Someone else? No, I recognize him. He's my dad. Not bad, not bad. I picked up a cheap son. What a great value. Oh, Xie Lian kicked him. Oh, Goozy was still young and had always lived dependent on his father, so he was quite attached to the body that Qi Rong had possessed, refusing to leave it alone. Xie Lian couldn't think of a way to take care of him at the moment. With the sword function on his back, he kowtowed solemnly towards the coffins thrice. Then, with Qi Rong hanging from his left hand and Goozy under his right arm, he left Mount Tai saying, returning speedily back to Puqi village. Just take Qi Rong with him. Okay. Having left for many days, by the time they made it back, it was deep into the night. The doors to the Puqi shrine were wide open, clouds of incense rolling out. Upon the altar, the incense burner was filled to the brim with sticks of incense, and the table itself was covered with offerings. Xie Lian entered, swept a look, grabbed 2 meat buns from the altar. He passed over one to Goozy and rudely stuffed the other into Qi Rong's mouth. Yes! The body was alive after all, and until Xie Lian figured out how to pull Qi Rong out of that man, he still needed sustenance. Oh my god. Qi Rong spat out the meat bun and cussed at how bad it tasted. Then yelled as if a little worried, I say, you won't actually hand me over to Hua Chong, will you? Oh, Xie Lian sneered. Are you scared? He didn't have time for his nonsense and turned around to rummage through the pickle jars on the ground. Me, scared? Oh, you should be the one scared. As a heavenly official, you dare to get so chummy with the Supreme. You... As he talked, his eyes suddenly focused and locked onto something. Turns out, when Xie Lian bent down, something slipped out of the front of his robes. It was a crystal clear ring. That was what Qi Rong was staring at. Oh no. Qi Rong's face grew suspicious. Cousin Crown Prince, what is that thing on your chest? Xie Lian was going to keep ignoring him, but what Qi Rong brought up was something he himself was curious about. He turned around, his finger hooked onto the silver chain. This? Do you know what it is? Bring it here, let me see, and I'll tell you. If you know, then say it. If you don't, shut up. Yeah, don't let him near that. He'll break it. You're always so nasty to people who are close to you. If you're so amazing, why don't you go show off how cool you are to the outsiders? Okay, he stuffed it back in. Yeah, I don't like that Qi Rong's seen that. I don't like that he's seen it. I don't at all. No. If you're so amazing, keep talking. Every word you say, I'll keep count. And with every count, you'll be one step closer to Hua Chong's blade. Somehow, without him realizing, he'd gotten used to using Hua Chong's name. Qi Rong sneered. Don't you use him to scare me. Maybe one of these days you'll be one of the dead under someone else's blade. Don't you want to know what it is? Who make part of the Four Supremes? I, who make part of the Four Supremes, shall tell you. That's a cursed accessory, an object of misfortune. Hurry it and throw it out. I can't believe you'd keep it on you. Think you'd be living for too long. Is this true? Duh. I'm telling you, whoever gave that to you, man or ghost, must not have good intentions. Oh. What do you mean, oh? He didn't bother trying to face him and said flatly, oh, just means it must be a miracle for anyone to believe you. I choose to believe in the person who gave this to me. I've decided to keep wearing it on my person. Oh! Xie Lian had always been gentle and courteous to others, but to Qi Rong, he was exceptionally cold. Qi Rong was madly furious, cussing nonstop, and Xie Lian only pretended to have heard nothing. He realized he couldn't find the pot that contained Banyu, no matter how much he looked, and thought, well, perhaps the Windmaster already came by and took her away. As he listened to Qi Rong, he suddenly felt something was off. Strange. Qi Rong was so obviously terrified of Hua Chong, so why was he trying to provoke him nonstop, as if he was intentionally trying to distract him? Oh, realizing this, Xie Lian suddenly attacked. He whipped around to glare at Qi Rong, and sure enough, he saw his eyes avert for an instant, looking mighty suspicious. Xie Lian's gut instinct made him look up. He raised his head, and the beams that weren't very high overhead, he saw a black-clothed man. Oh! And he had his back pressed against the ceiling, adhered above, just like a giant bat. Oh! He immediately pulled out Feng Shen and hurled the sword up. The man was pressed onto the beam, and to dodge the attack, he flipped around and fell. Guzi was so terrified his meat bun fell to the ground and he wailed. Just before Qi Rong could scream too, Rui sealed his mouth and dragged him to the corner and bound him. Xie Lian had thought this was one of Qi Rong's planted lackeys at first, yet after a few quick parries he noticed this man was fast and aggressive, oddly familiar. He could say with absolute certainty that this, with Qi Rong's competence, he wouldn't have the power to subdue such a subject. Then he saw there was something held in that man's other arm. It was a black pot, the one that had Banyu. Oh! Wait, the Windmaster hadn't taken Banyu away. A little Pei! Oh no! He's come to get his lady! Oh no! Little Pei had come to steal Banyu away! But he bumped into Xie Lian, who had just returned and could only hide above the wooden beam. Because Qi Rong was bound to Rui, lying on the ground, he immediately saw Pei Su hiding above. He didn't know who that was, and only thought that something was harmful to Xie Lian. It must be beneficial to him, of course. He was afraid Xie Lian would notice someone was lurking above and was trying to distract him. Oh, Xie Lian carried 2 cursed shackles, and Pei Su was in exile. Neither of the two had spiritual power, so they could only fight barehanded. Xie Lian had fought through his 800 years with nothing but his fists, so how could Pei Su compete? It didn't take many rounds before Xie Lian subdued him. Give back the pot. Xie Lian only shouted that randomly yet unexpectedly. Pei Su tossed the pickle pot back to him. Startled, he thought, was General Pei Jr. really that easy? He'd return the pot just by having asked? Usually, wouldn't they have had to push each other around for a bit longer? Yet, at the same time Pei Su tossed him the pot, he also warned in a low voice, hurry and go. By that tone, it sounded he was quite anxious. The pot was still in midair, and Xie Lian was reaching out to catch it, and suddenly, it changed course and flew out the window. Oh! The next second, they heard another man's voice coming from some distance away. You've really disappointed me. General. What? Why is he here? No! Sure enough, standing far out on the roof was Pei Ming. He wasn't wearing his armor, and his robes were casual. Tall and slender, bright like the sun, he was the very image of carefree. The pot leisurely flew next to Pei Ming and then stopped floating. With a hand relaxed on the hilt of his sword, he spoke to Pei Su, standing below. A man looks at the big picture and puts his career first. You're meant for great things, but what's going on? You'd mess yourself up for a little girl? Do you take yourself for an immature brat? Leave him alone, Pei Ming! He's in love, damn it! Pei Su hung his head low and didn't speak. Did you think it was easy to obtain that position in just 200 years? I even paved the road for you. It's easy to go down, but it ain't easy coming back up. Oh! They say it's lonely at the top. However, whenever a god of heaven descended, they usually preferred finding high places to stand. The higher it was, the easier it would be to watch all that was below. Xie Lian used to have that bad habit, of course, like when he was up on top of the wall. After he fell that one time, now whenever he stood high up, he could feel his legs aching, and that bad habit went away. Yet the tallest building within the Puqi village was the village's head house, and that house was a simple tile-roofed building. Having General Pei stand upon it was really doing him an injustice. However, that wasn't the point. The point was, with just a glance, Xie Lian knew what was going on. Last time, Pei Ming had the intent to push all the blame onto Banyu to clear Pei Su's name, and Xie Lian stopped it. Although in front of Junwu, Pei Ming appeared to have given up, but obviously he hadn't abandoned the idea. This time, after Xie Lian's crummy business with the Gilded Banquet got out, he could barely take care of himself, and his reputation no doubt crashed. General Pei probably thought it was an opportune time to bring up old affairs, and find Pei Su and bring both him and Banyu back up to the Heavenly Court to appeal a new trial. Truly relentless. Just leave him alone! However, Pei Su didn't seem overly thrilled at the prospect and breathed a sigh. General, let's just forget about this whole affair. Pei Ming looked speechless and exasperated. He must have been too frustrated to lecture Pei Su in front of Xie Lian. A moment later, he suddenly said, well, now I have to see just what kind of amazing girl could make all my hard work go down the drain. Oh. He reached out, seeming to plan on shattering the pot. Such a way to open it shouldn't have been a problem, but the real problem was Xie Lian didn't know whether Banyu's wounds were healed. If not, and the pot shattered, it would be bad. His face dropped and he leapt to charge. Don't break it! But before Pei Ming's hand even touched the thing, the pot went bang and exploded by itself. In an instant, the air was filled with the smell of pickles, strong enough to make a man suffer a mental breakdown. Pei Ming, who stood close to the pot, was unfortunately covered with pickles all over, entirely flabbergasted by the pickle shower. Immediately after, the clear, sonorous voice of a woman rang in midair. General Pei is such an honorable man. Oh my God, Windmaster's back, baby! Yes! Yes! A white-robed individual flipped out of that small pot. At first, she was only the size of a fist, but the more she flipped, the bigger she became. Lord Windmaster! The one hidden in the pickle pot wasn't Banyu, but Xingxuan. She hid in that pot and blew a barrage of pickles at Pei Ming, but she herself was still fluttering white robes, not a spot of stain. Oh my God, I've missed this. I needed this after the flashbacks. Oh. She landed steadily, swung her whisk, and proclaimed, thank goodness, thank goodness. Good thing I already sent the little lady to someone else beforehand. Otherwise, she wouldn't have escaped the long reach of General Pei. Is long reach a sexual innuendo? Pei Ming prided himself on his charm, and no matter what, he had to keep his composure. Yet now he stank of pickles, and even in the face of Xingshang in female form, he couldn't help but be a little woeful. Xingxuan, why do you have to fight against me like this? If it was anyone else, he probably would have beaten them to a pulp already. But just thinking of who Xingxuan's older brother was, he could only pick off the pickles, brush back his hair, and grit his teeth. He shook his head. You better not let me find out just where you sent the little girl. Otherwise, I will certainly pay a personal visit. Was he the big bad wolf or something? No! The tone of his voice was clear. Whoever dared take Banyu in was opposing him. And he would go seek trouble. However, Xingchong clapped. That's easy. Doesn't matter if I tell you where I sent her. I'd love to see you go visit. Listen well. That little girl is currently staying on Mount Yulong in the cave right next to the Rainmaster's residence. You dare go? What? At her words, Pei Ming's face dropped and actually didn't look as confident as he did before. He schooled his expression and suddenly became serious. He said to the Windmaster, Xing Shan, you're still young. That's why you like to fight for justice over every little thing. Hopefully when you get older, you won't regret the things you're doing now. Ah! Done! He leapt off the roof and his figure disappeared. He actually left in quite a hurry. Xie Lian was feeling a little bewildered and thought his words contained a hidden meaning. So he asked, Lord Windmaster, what did he mean? But nothing but empty threats. Pei watched Pei Ming's silhouette disappear before coming over to greet the other two. Lord Windmaster, your highness. Oh, Windmaster patted his shoulders. Little Pei, you knew to come and stop your general this time. Very generous of you. Take good care of yourself down here and reflect properly. If there's a chance, I'll speak well of you in the heavenly court. Don't you worry. Pei was speechless for a moment, but still replied, then thank you, my lord. However, I still think you might have misunderstood something. General Pei isn't usually like this. And it was only because of what's happened previously that he's overly worried about me. Besides, you know too that the Rainmaster... Ooh. In the end, Pei still felt like he spoke too much, shook his head and corded his hands. Farewell. Oh, mystery with the Rainmaster. What? But we know the Rainmaster is not... The Rainmaster's not... It's not his brother. His brother's the Watermaster. The two of them watched him leave, and Xie Lian spoke up again. Lord Windmaster, the Lord Rainmaster you spoke of earlier, was it Rainmaster Huang? The one, Rainmaster Huang. So Huang was the one that, it's funny that there's the Hua in all these names. Huang was the one that was, so yes, that's right, the Rainmaster hasn't changed in centuries. Is it someone you know, an acquaintance? No, he shook his head softly. Although I haven't had the honor to meet the Rainmaster, I owe a debt and am profoundly grateful. That's true. Although there aren't many who are acquainted with the Rainmaster, those who have never spoken, those who are have never spoken a bad word. Well, except Pei Ming. I could see that. We'll talk about that, but I could see that. Is there a dispute between them? Naturally. Those who have hung around the upper court for so long have all sorts of disputes and deceits. Ah, let me tell you, that Rainmaster is a shadow in Pei Ming's heart. A shadow? Xie Lian wondered. In his mind, he always thought the Lord Rainmaster was just someone who plowed fields. You know Pei Ming. He's got plenty of descendants. His grand however many sons are everywhere. I can't imagine why. Before little Pei, there used to be another deputy general at the palace of Mingguang, and it was also a descendant who was first appointed and then ascended. Oh, that General Pei sure has many talented descendants. Not anyone could just turn up for ascension as a simple homeschool lesson. She flashed her fan open and said he was indeed a talent, but was more or less the same as Pei Ming. Powerful, but also full of bad habits. That deputy official would often stir up trouble in other people's domains, but he had Pei Ming behind him, so no one dared say much until one day he messed around at the old residence in the kingdom of Yushi. The Lord Rainmaster rarely comes out and only plants fields deep in the mountains, so there's a nickname, Old Farmer in the Deep Mountains, Rainmaster Huang. But who knew the moment the Rainmaster emerged, that descendant of Pei Ming was beaten to a pulp? He got dragged back to the heavens, thrown in front of the Heavenly Emperor, and got sentenced to exile. Why does this sound so familiar? Xie Lian thought. At first, Pei Ming thought exile, whatever. He could very well fish him back in a couple 100 years. But how much can happen in the mortal realm in a century? Every year, every day even, new and impressive talents appear like flashes of light, wave after wave. You can barely keep count. It only took 10 years before all the devotees changed their idol. After 50 years, that heavenly official was completely forgotten. And after 100 years, he could no longer be recalled. That young heavenly official with a once boundless future was thus wasted no more. It wasn't until little Pei came around that Pei Ming had found another right hand he liked. No wonder General Pei would do everything in his power to fish little Pei back up, so there was a precedent, and he was afraid little Pei would go to waste too, although his methods weren't quite right. The human world. Yes, staying too long in the mortal realm will always wear down one's spirit and will. But Xie Lian's been there so long, right? The two nodded to themselves. The difference, however, was Xie Lian only nodded subconsciously, whereas the Windmaster was intentionally nodding in an exaggerated manner. Like, After nodding for a while, Xie Lian suddenly remembered an incredibly important individual. Oh, Long Ying, the child! Oh, too many things had happened all at once! The excitement was too great and he'd forgotten about the child. Oh, were you talking about the child you brought from Paradise Manor? The Heavenly Emperor has seen him, and he's currently at my place. I'll bring him down for you when I get the chance. There's still Qi Rong and another child locked up in Puqi Shrine. I can't have anyone see them. That'd be too much trouble. How about I go up instead? Same difference. Coincidentally, it'll be the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet soon. It's a once-a-year event, so you shouldn't miss it. This year, my brother will come back too, and I'll introduce you then. Ah! Her tone was full of pride for her own elder brother, and Xie Lian couldn't help but smile, thinking, a Mid-Autumn Festival banquet, huh? Every year, the Mid-Autumn Festival, all of heaven would hold a Mid-Autumn Festival banquet to celebrate and watch the people of the mortal realm as entertainment. Other than that, there was also a very important game during that banquet, a sort of grand finale to the feast, the Battle of the Lanterns. One blessings lantern couldn't be offered by just anyone. What the gods battled over during the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet was a number of those blessing lanterns offered by their devotees that each heavenly official would receive from their main temple. Although you would all hear on everyone's lips was, it's only a game, no need to take it seriously, we're just playing around, no need to mind. In reality, just how many really didn't care? The majority all secretly held their breath, hoping this year their devotees would fight for them. If there really was one who didn't fight, it'd only be Junwu, because, obviously, every year the great martial palace stood victorious, and the lanterns increased year after year. Thus, he was the only heavenly official who truly took this game for a game. As for the other heavenly officials, they didn't fight for first place, only for second, and even then, the competition was fierce. At the peak of the Palace of Shanla's prominence, it was also incomparably impressive, standing far ahead of the herd alongside the great martial palace, leaving all the other heavenly officials in the dust. Now it'd probably look quite sad. Xie Lian didn't even need to guess how to know how many of those blessing lanterns he'd get. Definitely not a single one. Oh! You sell yourself short, Xie Lian, but I don't know. I think you're selling yourself short just a wee bit. Well, a lot happened in this chapter, so I think I'm going to do like the last set of reactions and just talk through the chapters at the very end. So we're just going to go on through. Chapter 90, the Mid-Autumn Festival, battling lanterns on Moon Watch Eve 2. Okay, so this is the Battle of the Lanterns we're talking about. However, even if it looked bad, it'd still be better if he went. He wasn't like the Rainmaster, who had been living as a recluse for centuries. He wasn't like the Earthmaster, who had a secret mission. And he definitely wasn't like the Watermaster, who could just do whatever he wanted. If he wasn't anyone, but still insisted on standing out, refusing to attend just because he didn't feel like it, then after a while it'd create resentment, and there'd be talk. Even if he wouldn't think anything of it, it'd make things difficult for Junwu. Thus, he accepted the Windmaster's invite on the spot. All right, well, I will definitely be there when the time comes. In the following days, Xie Lian tried all sorts of ways, but he could not succeed in separating Qi Rong from the man's body, and Qi Rong was growing quite pleased with himself. Thank goodness for Guzi, who didn't mind feeding his dad, as Xie Lian really didn't feel like stuffing anything into his mouth. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Xie Lian drew an array outside the Puqi Shrine, locked the door from the outside, and left Rui behind to keep Qi Rong bound, and reported to the Heavenly Court. Leave the kid there, I guess. In verse they say, white jaded capital of the heavens, 12 towers, 5 cities, the immortal strokes my head, hair bound to receive immortality. So they're verses from the longest autobiographical poem by the renowned Tang poet Li Bai, lamenting his life and political aspirations while in exile. Li Bai was also known to be obsessed with becoming an immortal. A point of interest, hair bound to receive immortality in ancient China for the Han, binding hair and tying it up symbolized coming of age. Boys tie their hair up into a bun at 15 and are crowned at 20. Girls are given a hairpin for their bun at 15, and once married, hair must all be tied up into a bun. So, the white jaded capital here was, of course, talking about the Heavenly Court. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, everything was renewed and refreshed at the Heavenly Court. And other than that, Xie Lian could see the streets, quarters, and terraces were filled with increased security guards. Okay, so after Hua Chong's intrusion, they're all like on edge about it, right? It was set under the moon, in open air and surrounded by elegant fragrances and an air of proprietousness. Clouds of prosperity and blossoms flurried in the air like snow. For moon watching from the mortal realm, if one were to create a circle by touching one's thumb to the index finger, the moon could fit right in the frame. However, for moon watching in the heavens, that moon would be bright and immaculate like a giant jaded screen that stood but a close distance away, as if only a few steps it could be caught. Truly an ethereal sight that one could not see in the mortal realm. Oh, it's like the moon's just there, right? That's awesome. Seated at the head of the banquet, needless to say, was of course Junwoo. However, there was a hidden, intricate machination to how the rest should be seated, a method to order and position. Seated too up front was naturally a no-no, but seated too far away, the heavenly officials themselves wouldn't want to. Xie Lian didn't really care for these etiquettes. However, one must be formally dressed for the mid-autumn banquet, meaning one better wear what one's divine statue looked like in the mortal realm. Oh, so he has to put back on his dressings from before. Xie Lian didn't have a single divine statue, so he still wore the right cultivation robe with a bamboo hat tied on his back. Although a little shabby, he really didn't have anything better. He's like Cinderella. Dressing this way was kind of conspicuous, so he felt it'd be better if he sat somewhere more hidden away. Just as he had already found a random corner sit, he looked up and saw Feng Xin walk his way. Both of them stopped for a moment, nodding to each other, and considered it a greeting. "What are you doing sitting here?" "I thought I could sit anywhere." He was about to speak up when Xie Lian saw, far in the distance, the Windmaster waving at him from the front. Oh no! And she was in her female form, and Feng Xin turned and saw. It was like something foreboding. Looking aghast, he left Xie Lian to his own devices and hurried away. "Your Highness, over here!" Oh my god, yeah, the Windmaster's not going to let him stay outside. Of course not. The Windmaster was someone prominently popular in the Heavenly Court, and her seat was naturally one of the best, close to Junwoo. This wave and call made many of the heavenly officials look over, and Junwoo, who was at first sitting silently with his hand supporting his cheek, also noticed Xie Lian and inclined his head towards him, and Xie Lian had no choice but to go over. On the way, there was expectedly no sight of Lan Chongchu. He had long since declined his invitation in favor of searching for Qi Rong's whereabouts. Qingshan had found Xie Lian a seat right next to her, a spot with the best feng shui. Xie Lian didn't think it appropriate, but since the Windmaster was so fervently gracious, she was already pushing him down to sit. "I'll take you to the kid later after the banquet is over. He's a little ugly, but pretty obedient." Aw, he could only say his thanks. Turning his head, the one seated near the two was Ming Yi, playing with a jade cup silently. Oh, the jade cup, like with the dice in it from the Paradise Manor. Of course, Ming Yi was sitting right next to the Windmaster. Of course he was. The color of his face was normal enough, so it seemed his injuries he received whilst in the Ghost City were healed. "Earthmaster, you seem well." Ming Yi nodded once, looking like he didn't want to talk. But the Windmaster, however, was the complete opposite. She knew everyone and could say a few words to anyone sitting front, back, left, right, even those further away. Xie Lian was quite in awe of how she could remember all the names of all those heavenly officials, no matter their rank. Seated next to him was a young man of 18, 19, his nose tall and his brows deep, his raven hair slightly curly. Xie Lian didn't know him, and he didn't know Xie Lian either. The two looked at each other for a bit, feeling a little lost, and ended the awkward stare after Xie Lian made up a random greeting. Looking around some more, Feng Xin and Mu Qing both sat as far from each other as they could. Of course, and the one seated right in front of him, chatting with the other with familiarity, were three heavenly officials. On the left was a black-clad civil official, his brows respectable, his appearance generous. Between words, 5 fingers gently tapped a regular rhythm on the table, his expression steady and calm, looking somehow familiar. The middle, of course, was the very acquainted Pei Ming, and on the far right was a white-robed gentleman, a fan gently fanning in his hand. On the front side of the fan, the word "shui" for water, and on the back side drawn 3 wavy lines. His brows and eyes looked quite similar to the Windmaster's, seemingly kind, but his expression very clearly indicated he didn't care for anyone. Who else could it be but that water tyrant? These were the 3 tumors. Oh! So the black-clad civil official was Ling Wen's most powerful form, and it was impressively proper. So this is Ling Wen in her male form. Okay. All right. The 3 of them were greeted each other and used all manner of ways from all ends of the earth and heavens to praise and compliment each other. Point where Xing Shang grumbled under her breath, fake. So fake. Xie Lian found it rather amusing, however. Just then he noticed at the front of the banquet tables was a small pavilion with the red stage curtains covering all 4 of its sides. What's that? Oh, you don't know? This is also a really popular game in the upper court. Come, just watch it starting now. She trailed off as a few rumbling sounds of thunder came rolling beyond the skies. Junwu glanced at the sky, poured a glass of wine, and passed it down. Then in the midst of the rumbling thunder, the seated heavenly official started laughing and hollering as they passed around that glass of wine, shouting, "Don't give it to me! Don't give it to me! Pass it to him!" Oh. Just watching the others play, Xie Lian somewhat figured out what the rules were and thought, so it's a drummed flower passing. The crowd passed around the glass of wine passed down from Junwu to each other without spilling it, so the wine could be passed to anyone, but it must not be passed back to the same person. When the thunder stopped, whoever the wine cup ended up would be picked upon for fun, only he didn't know what kind of fun it would be. To Xie Lian, this game wasn't a friendly one. The one you passed the wine cup to would be the one who got ridiculed, so most would pass it to the ones they're closer with. Yet he wasn't close with most of the heavenly officials present, so how dare he be so nonchalantly ridiculing the others? At best, he can only pass it to the Windmaster, but what if the Windmaster happened to be the one who passed him the wine? Best if no one passes it to me, Xie Lian thought. But I might be thinking too highly of myself. Before he even had the thought, the first round was over. Under the intense watch of everyone, the glass of wine stopped in Pei Ming's hand. It seemed Pei Ming was used to this, and downed the glass in one gulp amidst the roaring cheers. The officials clapped and hollered, "Raise it! Raise it!" Oh, in the thick of the cheers, the glamorous pavilion slowly raised the curtains of its 4 sides. Upon the platform stood a tall general, head raised, steps wide, imposingly impressive. It didn't look like he noticed any of the heavenly officials from below, nor the strangely beautiful scenery of the heavens. He walked for a few steps and started singing verses, sonorous and enthusiastic. It turns out, whoever the wine cup ended with, the pavilion would bring forth the plays written about that particular heavenly official from the mortal realm and perform it for all to see. Oh no, that sounds like a bad thing. Xie Lian needs to get out of there. We don't need to see plays about Xie Lian. No, we just experienced that several chapters ago. Due to humans' deep love for making things up, who knew just what kind of shocking play they would see? And one wouldn't know when they'd be picked, so this game was very much both thrilling and embarrassing. However, this was also how entertainment was derived. It must be said that each of the General Pei's plays were all exhilarating simply because of the female counterpart was different every time. Sometimes it was a celestial being, sometimes a ghost, sometimes an unmarried lady. Each female counterpart was more beautiful than the next, and the stories were each more shameless than the next. The heavenly officials watched with deep interest, waiting for the woman to enter the scene. Sure enough, it didn't take long before a black-clad lady entered the stage, her voice like a golden aureole. The 2 actors sang to each other, the lyrics brazenly flirtatious. The more the crowd watched, the more something didn't feel right, and they started asking around, what is the name of this play? Drummed flower passing is just hot potato. Okay. Who's the woman the general is seducing this time? Just then, the General Pei on the stage called out, "Noble Xie." Oh. Below the stage, both Pei Ming and Ling Wen spat out their mouthfuls of wine. Who else could that noble Xie be? Ling Wen's full name was Nonggong Xie. The heavenly officials were shocked. Did those 2 have a past together? What? Ling Wen? Pei Ming? Girl, get you some! Oh my god. There's no need to think on it. It's made up. Although the 2 in question were still a little woeful, still they were both thick-skinned enough. The play continued to on the stage, and the 2 below pretended not to see. The Windmaster wouldn't let them off the hook so easily. He smiled, fanning his fans. Oh, Shi Wudo, the Watermaster. What an exciting play. Any thoughts, you 2? Not really. This play is old, My divine statues back then weren't like the ones now. It's only a folk tale. Think about it. In folk tales, as long as they're women, who hasn't old Pei tried to seduce? Ah, everyone agreed wholeheartedly. Hey, you can't say that. It's true that I've seduced pretty much everyone in the folk tales, but in this one, I really haven't. Don't wrong the innocent. By your logic, since all the mortals say I've seduced even more male officials whilst I've done nothing, wouldn't I be sitting on pins and needles? Just you two admit that you've had a past together. The two of you just need to admit you boned. It's okay. It's fine. I'm still floored. Okay. Ever since Ling Wen was brought to the heavens via appointment, the folk tales all told she did it through seducing another heavenly official. Which is why at the beginning the palace of Ling Wen was cold and quiet with very few worshippers. Apparently during a period of intense objection, she was cussed and cursed to the ends of the earth, and there were even those who'd throw minstrel linens and bralettes into her donation boxes. However, if male officials had similar rumors, they'd gain the title charming instead. Oh yeah, point out the double standard of sexism. Let's do it. Let's do it, MXTX, and could take full pleasure in it. Clearly, although the situations were similar, a difference between male and female existed, and the consequences were different. Yeah, MXTX, girl, you get it. Bring it up. Noble G, the noble here doesn't refer to Ling Wen's status, but as an expression of endearment. Just as Xie Lian was thinking this, the next round began. Nope, Shi Wudu was laughing earlier, but this round came to him. The two tuners next to him raised and quartered their hands in a congratulatory gesture in unison. Instant karma, take it graciously. Shi Wudu furrowed his brows and drank the wine, and the curtains were raised once more. Before the curtains had even reached the very top, two long trills came from within. My wife, hubby! Boundlessly affectionate, the tender voices twisted and turned, filled with lingering yearning. Thus, from below, Xie Lian saw with his own eyes, goosebumps popping up all over half of Shi Wudu and Shi Xingshang's bodies. Oh, cut it off! Drop it right now! Even without seeing. Oh, one can easily guess the play picked must be from the folklore of the husband and wife between the Watermaster and Windmaster. Oh, saying that they're together and they're like, no incest. Tales of love and hatred would always be fan favorites when people told stories. If either was already there, good. If not, even better. Oh, we're going to talk about this because then anything can be made up. Oh, I want to talk about this so bad. Technically, whatever the gods had actually done themselves were the conventional legends, but sometimes when they saw what the mortals came up with for them, they couldn't help but be amazed by what truly was legendary. The moment Shi Wudu spoke up, the curtains really did drop. The heavenly officials in the audience all wanted to laugh but didn't dare to, suffering from holding in their mirth. Lord Windmaster, I didn't know that you could call for the curtains to drop. Yeah, it's no big deal. Just donate 100,000 merits. Oh, shit. Well, he sat speechless and the third round began. This time, the thunder didn't rumble for very long, and the wine cup was passed to the young man sitting next to Xie Lian. Seeing this, the reaction from the crowd of heavenly officials was odd. It wasn't fervent, but it wasn't cold. More like they were very interested in seeing the play, but didn't want to be so obvious about it. The young man didn't seem to be too interested in the game, but still drank the wine. He put the cup down, and the curtains were raised once more. Two stood upon the stage. One was a young general with curly hair, like that of a stone lion's mane, and although exceedingly exaggerated, he still looked heroically sprightly, so he must be portraying the young heavenly official. The other one had pointy lips and monkey cheeks, the very portrayal of a wretched clown, jumping all over the stage. When the young man faced him, he'd act very serious, but greasy and loathsome. When that young man turned around, he'd make faces and take a sword to backstab, no doubt the role of a two-faced, cunning villain. The clown performed with vigor and over-embellishment, like it was a silly comedic play, but the reactions from the heavenly officials in the audience were vastly different. Xie Lian noticed that the officials in the lower ranks all laughed uproariously, while the higher-ranked officials, like the Windmaster and the Watermaster, all frowned wordlessly, not thinking it was amusing whatsoever. At the same time, he also noticed the veins popping out suddenly on the fists of the young man beside him, and Xie Lian became alarmed. He didn't understand what was going on stage, but he still guessed it was ridiculing another. Besides, if he didn't know who it was, just the way the play was enacted made him feel extremely uncomfortable. The young man seemed to be ready to throw a fit, and Xie Lian took a chopstick from the table and hurled it towards the rope controlling the curtains. The not-so-sharp chopstick brushed by the rope, and it actually snapped. The curtains dropped, and the officials cried in shock, "How can this be? What's going on?" They all looked to Xie Lian, some even rising to their feet. Xie Lian was about to open his mouth when the next second, something exploded next to his ear. The young man had shattered the white jaded wine cup in his fist. It appeared the play had provoked this outrage, and he threw away the shards of the jaded cup in a fit. He jumped to his feet and sprang onto the table, pushed off of his feet, and leapt onto the pavilion, barging through the curtains. The heavenly official rushed to lift the curtains, but there was already no one inside. His Highness Qi Ying went down to beat people up again. Oh! Qi Ying! The Palace of Qi Ying, the Martial Guard of the West! Chan Yizhen. Oh, Lord Windmaster, what's going on? What's with His Highness Qi Ying going to beat down people again? Beating people up is just beating people up. You might not believe it, but Qi Ying frequently beats up his own worshippers. What? That was really the first time he'd ever heard of a heavenly official who dared assault their own followers, since that was something that could destroy their very image in their believers' minds. It's something he wanted to inquire more about, but then he heard a lower heavenly official further away speak up in displeasure. Lord Chan really is too immature. Everyone's just having some fun. Doesn't he know how to cooperate a little? Who hasn't been picked on? Did General Pei and Ling Wenzhen not get laughed at? Besides, it wasn't even him who was being made fun of, so why was he so angry? Yeah, he really thinks too much of himself. If he's mad, there's no need to throw a fit right this second. The banquet's a fun occasion. No one's here to watch his temper, really. The kid is a kid. He's not even here anymore. It'll be more fun without him anyway. The feast was only temporarily disrupted, and Ling Wen seemed to have already sent someone to take care of Chan Yizhen's affair. After some officials came up and assuaged the others, the banquet games continued, and the thunder rumbled and the fourth round of the drum and flower passing began. At first, Xie Lian was only watching other people play. He couldn't blend in and was happy others didn't bother him. He was about to chat with the Windmaster when a hand was suddenly extended to him and passed. No! And passed him the jaded white cup! No! Get it out of here! Damn it! No! No! You made me pick this option for a reason! No! You knew what you were doing. No! Xie Lian doesn't need a drink, and we don't need to see any plays about him either! Dang it! You all knew exactly what you were doing. Y'all are monsters. No, you're not monsters. You really aren't, because I know why. There's so much in these two chapters. I know why y'all told me not to read more, because you're like, no. And the way that this book is set up, even though the next part is chapters 91 and 92, like this part here with chapters 89 and 90, there's not a separation of the chapters, so I'd have to find the page number and stop mid-chapter. So I could see why option B was not going to work for y'all on Patreon, and I know why you didn't want me to read 4 chapters, because there's so much with these chapters, but what a cruel cliffhanger. What a cruel cliffhanger. Because you just knew it was going to happen. You knew that damn wine cup was going to stop on Xie Lian. We've just had a whole arc of shit about Xie Lian and how bad his life is, and he's had to deal with all this for 800 years, and now you're going to have a play show up that's going to just bring it all back to the surface? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? That seems like such a cruel thing to do. MXTX, girl. Man, these chapters, I'm like, I didn't even stop to take. I've not taken notes the last several weeks. I've just read straight through because there's so much. I'm like, I'm just going to end up rewriting all of this on whiteboard, Coon. So I might as well just wait and do it at the end because, man, and what a tonal shift, right? What a tonal shift. We go from dark, bleak, and despair to Windmaster is back, baby. Best girl is back. And Qi Rong is Qi Rong. Guzi is here, his kid. Pei Pei Jr., I love him so much. His adoration towards Banyu, I just want them to go off together. You have Banyu, who is Xie Lian's adopted little daughter, and she's like Xie Lian, Hua Chong's adopted little daughter. Pei Su seems like a great kid. Let him go. I feel like Xie Lian's like the pop with the kid, like, just go be with Banyu. Like, I want Pei Jr. and Banyu to be happy together. I ship them so hard, right? Honestly, if I ship anybody in this series, the two couples I ship the most are, I ship Xie Lian and Hua Chong, obviously. But my second favorite couple is probably Pei Jr. and Banyu. I think it's so cute. It's just so precious. He just wants to do right by her and keep her safe. And I'm like, from his ancestor who's got a bone to pick, and literally a bone. Ling Wen and Pei Ming! What is happening? Ling Wen, Pei Ming, Xijin finally showed up. These chapters were so much. And meanwhile, Junwoo's just sitting there like, I really hate my life. I'm like, As you can see, I'm still gaining my voice back, so it gets really high-pitched. For me, this is high-pitched, and I'm like, oh my god. But y'all, I'm going to bring Whiteboard Coon just a little slightly bit closer so we can get maximum usage of the Whiteboard Coon here, because, oh my god, there's just a lot in these chapters. 2 chapters. MXTX is like, yeah, that depressing flashback stuff, huh? How about we have fun times and I just give you all the things at once? It's like a festival, all the things. It's a very curious contrast to Paradise Manor and the Ghost City Festival. You have the Ghost Festival where everything's kind of like menacing and like kind of dangerous, but Xie Lian's kind of like all about it. And then here, Xie Lian doesn't want to... Xie Lian is more fitted to be in the Ghost City, where he's, like, running around trying not to get eaten, than he is sitting during a, like pomp and circumstance with mingling with the elites, right? Xie Lian ain't no elite anymore. He may have been born that way. He may have grown up that way, but 800 years later, give him his little shrine out in the country, give him his little Supreme Ghost King, he's got it made, right? But, damn... I fall more in love with this story the more we go, because it's like MXTX sets things up. There's setup and payoff. And it's just wonderful to see that setup and payoff actually happen in front of you as you read. It's really wonderful because at the end of the day, we're going to put Xie Lian up here. Where Xie Lian is at in all of this, right? At the end of the day, he can't kill Qi Rong. After all that's happened, he's like, nope, can't do it. I can't kill him. So he's like, I'm not going to kill this body of this dad that Qi Rong has inhabited. It's just not going to happen. So he's not going to kill the body that Qi Rong is possessing. Which is good because, as we've established, nothing would really come of that. Qi Rong is not going to get killed if Xie Lian does that. Just the father will die and Qi Rong will cackle his way off into oblivion until he finds another soul to inhabit, right? And maybe he would have possessed the child. We don't know. I wouldn't put it past Qi Rong. He's greasy enough to do that. So yeah, just doesn't work out. We find out that Guzi is the child. So there's that. And Qi Rong gets so mad at him, right? I'm gonna find, where's my green? Get Qi Rong up in this. We got so many characters in this chapter. We're gonna put Qi Rong up here. And Qi Rong, he just sneers. He just calls Xie Lian trash, right? He just says, like, I like that he says, okay, Xie Lian, what does a god like you live for? There is so much in these chapters that are setting up things that will need answers later. And I'm like, okay, I told you I was going to make that list and I'm going to add to it like a billion things because it's like, okay, he says, what does a god like you live for? What do you need to live for? And that seems like such a question that Xie Lian's just not even thinking about him at the moment. He's just like, not even worried about the questions that he's asking. But I feel like that question is going to come back to him. he's already told Hua Chong that Hua Chong can live for him. I am waiting for it to all come full circle. And Hua Chong's like, well, Xie Lian, you can live for me. And they're just going to live for each other. And it's going to be beautiful and wonderful and romantic as hell. And I'm ready for it. I'm just, ugh. But Qi Rong asks him that question. And Xie Lian, he is like, he's like, don't be too happy. I can't do anything, but there'll be someone that can. And so Qi Rong, when he says that there'll be somebody who can get you, Qi Rong assumes that Xie Lian is going to take him to Junwu. He says, oh, are you going to go hug Junwu's legs and beg him for help? It's like he thinks, and he brings up the fact that Xie Lian's done it once before. So clearly that is the story. The story that has gone around to even the ghosts is that Xie Lian went to Junwu for help and it didn't work, right? We've established, and maybe that's part of what Qi Rong found out while he was alive during the flashback. But in either case, he assumes that Xie Lian's going to take him to Junwu. And Junwu's like, no, not really feeling that. And so he's like, I'm not, and Qi Rong says, I'm nothing, you've got nothing on me. He's like, are you afraid of Hua Chong? And he says, maybe I just will hand you over to Hua Chong and let him deal with you. And so he is terrified of Hua Chong. With good reason. Hua Chong would probably kill him and probably wouldn't think much of it, right? And so he's like, one of these days, if I get in a bad mood, I'll hand you over to him. And Qi Rong couldn't laugh anymore. He's like, why don't you just hand me over to Long Chuan Chu? Because here's the thing. Qi Rong, he knows, like, I'm sure that Qi Rong would be terrified in front of Junwu. I'm sure he would be. But I'm sure that Qi Rong also knows that Junwu is bound by a system of the heavenly officials. He can't get too crazy with Qi Rong. He doesn't know where his ashes are. So he'd probably just lock him up in a mountain somewhere. And Qi Rong would just, you know, do his little gremlin thing. And Long Chuan Chu he's not scared of at all. Because he knows Long Chuan Chu has nothing on him. But Hua Chong could maybe find his ashes. Could maybe kill him. Doesn't have any qualms from not playing by the rules. So he's a supreme ghost. Why would he have to? So yeah, Qi Rong being scared of Hua Chong over Junwu makes a lot of sense. And I like that. But yeah, he basically is just like, he just starts chewing Xie Lian out. And Xie Lian ignores him. And the moment that little Goozy helps him like pick up his mom's ashes off the ground to put back into the costume of himself, the symbolism of putting his mother's ashes into his costume to put back into the coffin that Qi Rong had dressed up in. Oh my God. And that Xie Lian's not mad at the kid anymore because it's not the kid's fault. They didn't know. And so, oh God, it's like just another day for Xie Lian picking up his mom's ashes and putting it back in the coffin. Fun times all around. And he says that all things considered, requesting Hua Chong's help wouldn't be a bad idea. He's like, he could use it to scare Qi Rong, right? And he says that he doesn't really want to hand over Qi Rong to the heavenly court. He's like, well, if I hand him over, Long Chuan Chu's going to come up and then try to kill him. And I like this, the way that MXTX words this. She's like, should he be killed? A headache. If he's killed, then what's next? Another headache. Thus, it wasn't wise to hand him over. So Xie Lian is kind of evading authority a little bit here because Xie Lian has decided he doesn't want Qi Rong killed. Now, that begs the question, could Junwu kill Qi Rong without the whole ashes thing because he's the Heavenly Emperor? Is that how he got rid of Bai Wuxiang? Or so we think? Interesting. I'm just going to put a pin in that. I don't want to be answered, but I'm going to just put a pin in it, right? But he doesn't want Qi Rong killed. And there's a little implication there that if Qi Rong is killed, well, then they'll try to go after Hua Chong, right? Because as far as we know, Bai Wuxiang is gone. The Blackwater is MIA. Nobody cares about him. So your two big threats are Qi Rong and Hua Chong. So if Qi Rong is destroyed, who's to stop the heavenly officials from deciding that Hua Chong needs to go as well? And so I think that's what Xie Lian's afraid of, is that it'll be a gateway. It'll be a gateway to go after Hua Chong, which he doesn't want. And so I find that that's fascinating itself. But then what's also fascinating after, he helps Goozy and Goozy doesn't understand that Qi Rong's not his dad, is that he's been using Qi Rong's name quite a lot and has been rather comfortable with it. He's like, and here's the thing. Goozy's young and impressionable, so this all works out pretty well. I love the idea that he gives them meat buns. So they show up at Puqi Shrine. There's clouds of incense. Puqi Shrine's been kept up to date. The Windmaster has been there, right? Taken Banyu, did the thing, swapped out the pickle jar. God, the pickle jar scene. Freaking love it. It's amazing. But he grabs the meat buns. I love that he gently hands, it's like he gently hands to Goozy the little meat bun and then he just shoves the other one in Qi Rong's mouth, like, stop it, right? He needs sustenance because he's still using this body. And he's like, you won't actually hand me over to Hua Chong, will you? And he's like, are you scared? I like that Xie Lian and Qi Rong, they are both snide at each other. The curious thing is that they're their only family that they have left. Qi Rong and Xie Lian are the only family one another has. And so it's kind of like, when you have relatives and you bicker with them, and it's just like, do this, like they're just those kind of relatives, right? But at this point, Function knows that Qi Rong is his cousin. He knows. Now, whether Function has shared that information or not, we don't know. But we know, so because would Junwoo think that Xie Lian has an invested interest in keeping Qi Rong safe because they're family? The only family he has left is this ghost. I don't know. But that's rather interesting. But he says, are you scared? He's like, well, you should be the one scared. As a heavenly official, you dare to get so chummy with a supreme. So there's this forbidden love angle that's being brought up. Like, a heavenly official in love with a supreme ghost? Oh, the stars are so crossed, right? I have a feeling that's going to be a damn plot point. They're going to be like, Xie Lian can't be in love and fooling around with a supreme ghost. The evil of all evils. Why, heavens no. And then Xie Lian's going to be like, he's not that bad, guys. As he's destroying the heavenly realm with butterflies, he's not that bad, But yeah, so Qi Rong is kind of like, why are you so chummy with him? What's up? And that's when he notices the ring. Now, we come to find out later that he was really just distracting Xie Lian because he noticed that Pei Jr. was up there. So, can we assume that anything he says about the ring bears anything nearing truth? We can't. We can't say that exactly, right? We can't exactly say that it does or not. But all he tells him is that it's a item of misfortune, right? He says it'll be an item of misfortune. Do you know what it is? And he says, every word you say, I will keep count. And every count, you'll be a step closer to Hua Chong. And then he realized he'd gotten closer. He'd gotten used to saying Hua Chong's name. And he felt a little bit embarrassed about it. And so he says, well, I, who make up the Four Supreme, shall tell you, it's a cursed accessory, an object of misfortune. I can't believe you have it on you. Do you think you've been living for too long? He kept rambling because he saw Pei Jr., right? And that's when he knows something was off. And Xie Lian's just like, oh, okay. And the thing about it is that Qi Rong says that the ring is an object of misfortune. That it will bring bad luck, which would make sense, being that Hua Chong he doesn't know where the ring is from. He just thinks he says it's an object of misfortune, which would make sense because it's from Hua Chong. But then Xie Lian says that it'd be a miracle for anyone to believe you. Like, you're such a liar. I choose to believe in the person who gave this to me. So, Xie Lian, by choosing to wear the ring, he believes in Hua Chong. Big hearts, y'all. Big hearts. Like, These chapters, I'm just waiting for their reunion. I'm waiting for their reunion. It's gonna happen this volume. I know it, and I'm just slowly waiting for it. But yeah, I kept thinking the whole time reading this first chapter, I was like, is Hua Chong just like off in the wings watching Xie Lian from a distance? And then we find out it's the Windmaster and Pei Jr. But I kept thinking that Hua Chong was there, like just listening to Xie Lian. I mean, if Hua Chong heard what Xie Lian just said, then he's like, I choose to believe in him. Stars coming out of his brain, I tell you. And that's when Pei Jr. shows up, and he recognized from fighting him that it's little Pei, and he has Banyu. Now, we establish, Xie Lian says that he has 2 cursed shackles. So he has 2 cursed shackles. We are not told this for sure, but could one be from the first and one from the second descension as punishment from Junwoo? I'm thinking so. And then Pei Su is in exile, so he was just trying to save Banyu. I'm gonna put little Pei over here, Pei Jr. And all I'm gonna say is that I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him and Banyu. Because it's so sweet that he wanted to protect her. Because he knows how the heavenly realm works. He knows that they would scapegoat her and hurt her. And I was like, he knows she doesn't deserve that. And then, you really disappointed me. Now, I know there is a huge Pei Ming fan club. I know that some of y'all are just, y'all got your minds in the gutter and you're barking at the bit for this guy. But I'm not the biggest Pei Ming fan yet. And I know what, I'm going to go ahead and say this before the comments come rolling in about how I need to get on board the Pei Ming boner bandwagon. But all I'm going to say is that I have come around with lots of characters in this show. Junwoo I'm still like on tepid water with him, but it's better. I'm sure my views of characters will change as we go through this series, because we still have like 5 volumes of this, right? And I'm sure when we find out more about Pei Ming, it'll be great. But right now, Pei Ming is not on my good list because he's being a jerk. He's being a jerk. He's trying to get this little ghost he just can't leave her alone. I'm like, dude, Pei Jr. clearly doesn't want you to do anything to her. Like, let it go. Your descendant is fine being exiled, learning the errors of his ways. It's okay, right? What I'm afraid of is what he thinks is going to happen. Because he's like, a man looks at a big picture and puts his career first. You're meant for great things, but you'd mess yourself up for a little girl. Are you an immature brat? It's what's curious about this whole moment is, we'll put Pei Ming over here. Pei Ming talks about that you need to be a career man. Pei Jr., hit it and quit it, son, as long as you keep the job in the forefront. That's basically his mentality, is what he's telling him. He's like, why would you sacrifice your job for this ghostly girl? And I feel like he is associating, I feel like whether Pei Ming realizes it or not, he is associating Pei Jr. with Xie Lian. Because you have Xie Lian, who likes a ghost. You have Pei Jr., who likes a ghost. You have Xie Lian, who fell and has not been able to climb his way back up. You have Pei Jr., who he says, it's easy to go down, it's not easy to come back up. So he's like, you've been knocked down. And he's seen this with his former descendant, right? So he's got a little bit of trauma from that. He's trying to get Pei Jr. out, but Pei Jr.'s like, I did this to myself. I'm not going to cheat my way back into the system. And there's this argument about how it's lonely at the top. That whenever a god of heaven descended, they usually preferred higher places to stand, where it was easier to watch the people below. And I like this, that Xie Lian notes that he used to do that. He used to stand in tall places to look down on others. And we saw that in the flashback. We saw when he was walking the tower walls, looking down at people. We saw when he was up on the tower wall and looked down at Bai Wusheng, and Bai Wusheng's like, bye, and saw that whole thing. We've seen Xie Lian do that. We've seen him descend onto the tops of temples where even he was above the Goshi when he and the Goshi were arguing. So he's done that so many times. But now, 800 years later, he stands on the same level as men and ghosts. He doesn't put himself above people anymore, right? He doesn't do that. And so I like the idea that Pei Ming tried to do that in this scenario, and it doesn't quite work, right? It just doesn't quite work. He's on top of like a little tiled roof, and it's not exactly the same thing, right? And Pei Jr.'s just like, let's just forget this whole affair. Like, just leave her alone. And Pei Ming is just speechless and exasperated that he's having to lecture Pei Jr. And this is the part where I was a little bit like, leave Pei Jr. alone. Because Pei Ming's like, well, let's just see what kind of amazing girl would make all my hard work go down the drain. I'm like, sir, you're an asshole. I was like, no, that's something an asshole says, like a douchebag says, being like, well, you know, he basically was threatening to see if Banyu was of value. That's so mean. Like him saying, like, I did all this hard work for you, Pei Jr., and this girl better have been worth it. I'm like, oh, she is, and screw you. I wanted to defend Pei Jr. and let him and Banyu run off together. I just want him to live in the Puqi shrine with Banyu and Xie Lian and Huachong, and Huachong just shoos them away whenever he wants like alone time with Xie Lian. He's like, get out of here, right? Just felt so bad for him. And I love it. I love when he goes to break. And the thing about it is, Xie Lian, it's not that breaking the jar is going to necessarily, you know, it's not like the jar was super powerful holding her in, but if she's still injured and the jar breaks, it could hurt her as a ghost. And so Xie Lian's like, no, don't do it. And then it breaks and it's just pickles. God, I love it. The Windmaster is one of my favorites. I love them. They're the best. And I love how the Windmaster chose to be in a female form around Pei Ming, almost like an insult. She was like, oh, like, you're such a woman's man, but you're not getting any of this, so how's it feel? Like, I feel like it was such an insult to Pei Ming that the Windmaster's like, yeah, you're not getting any of this, Mr. Playboy. I'm like, Windmaster is mwah. Love her. Love him. So we're going to put them there. The Windmaster, whose name is much easier to say than Qingshan, right? Although we do get to see Shi Wudu, the Windmaster, the Water Master. There's a lot of masters in these chapters, right? So basically plays a prank on Ming with the pickle jar, which is absolutely hilarious. I love it so much. And then Xie Lian's like, oh, Lord Windmaster, look at you. And like, oh, thank goodness. I already sent the little lady to someone else beforehand. So she sent Banyu to the Rainmaster of all people. Very curious. Because, and it makes sense, because the Rainmaster's a recluse. No one seems to mess with the Rainmaster. No one seems to want to mess with the Rainmaster. So where's the best place to send a little ghost girl in a jar where none of the heavenly officials will ever find her? The Rainmaster. And I love that the Windmaster is somehow friends enough with them to let this work. I feel like, I wonder if the Rainmaster was told that it was Xie Lian. I don't know what the Windmaster told them. That's going to be a curious mystery. Like how did they convince them to take on Banyu? Like, I don't know if they'd mentioned Xie Lian and it would have any effect. What would be the point? How did the Windmaster make that work? Curiouser. But Pei Ming, he prides himself, right, on being a ladies' man and being charming. And the fact that the Windmaster got his goat while in female form, he's like, why do you have to fight against... He gets all like pouty. He's like, why'd you have to fight against me like that? Why can't you just be like, think I'm hot like everybody else? And Windmaster's like, no. Like, you had better not let me find out. Oh, and then Pei Ming says, you better not let me find out where you sent the little girl or I'll pay a personal visit. And so he basically was associating anybody with Banyu as being like a traitor or whatever. And the Windmaster's like, yeah, so I put her right in the cave next to the Rainmaster's residence. Want to go? And his face dropped. And he calls the Windmaster young, and that's why you fight for justice. And when you get older, you won't regret the things that you're doing now. That's interesting. So he basically makes a comment here saying that the Windmaster is young. And by being young, he says, you fight for justice over every little thing. So still fighting for justice over every little thing. And then he says that when you're older, you won't regret the things you're doing now. Okay. Which honestly, Xie Lian has found himself under like-minded company because the Windmaster and Pei Jr. are very similar to Xie Lian, or at least seem to be in terms of fighting for things they believe in, right? At least it seems that way with the Windmaster. And the Windmaster's not concerned. They're like, yeah, nothing but empty threats. It's fine. And so the little Pei Jr. is like, saying, thank you. Thank you. I still may have misunderstood something. General Pei isn't usually like this, and it was only because of what happened previously he was overly worried. You know that too about the Rainmaster. And there's something about the Rainmaster that nobody's wanting to talk about, which is interesting. And so Huang is the Rainmaster. So we have Rainmaster Huang, which is the same Rainmaster that Xie Lian got the bamboo hat from. And they are currently in charge of Banyu. Which means we're going to see them again at some point, right? Because we're not going to leave Banyu for the rest of the story. We're going to go find the Rainmaster at some point. And I'm sure it's going to tie back to everything going on in the story. I'm sure it's going to have some bearing over everything. I'm pretty positive, right? And he says, well, is it... And the Windmaster's like, oh, do you know the Rainmaster? Are they acquaintance? And the funny thing is, Xie Lian says, I haven't had the honor to meet them, but I owe them a debt, and I'm profoundly grateful. Like, the thing of it is, one, I think they have met the Rainmaster. I think the Rainmaster was the ox that stood up and talked to him. I think that's the Rainmaster. They just had a different form. And two, the fact that Xie Lian is grateful. Like, we just spent the last several chapters talking about how horrible him trying to bring water to Yong'an was, and how it was a horrible mistake and had all these horrible repercussions. But at the end of the day, he's like, I asked for help, and he was the only one that offered me help. He was the only one that let me do what I asked. So I'm grateful. It's like, oh my gosh. Right? And so Windmaster says, is there a dispute? There's not many who have acquainted with the Rainmaster. Those who are have never spoken a bad word except for Pei Ming. And the Windmaster says those who have hung around the upper court for so long have some sort of dispute or deceit. So the Windmaster makes an important commentary that the heavenly officials in the upper court have a dispute or deceit with one another. It's basically fake. They're all a bunch of fakies, as the Windmaster will say later on. And for some reason, the Rainmaster and Pei Ming have this dispute. And so it says the Rainmaster is a shadow in Pei Ming's heart. And for a second, I really was going to go there. I was going to be like, okay, did the Rainmaster pose as a woman and get Pei Ming's goat? Or did Pei Ming fall? Is the Rainmaster the only man Pei Ming's ever fell in love with? Is that where this is going? No, not at all. My BL mind was in the gutter way too much. But what ends up happening is we find out that Pei Ming had a previous descendant, that they had a descendant before Pei Jr. And what ends up happening with them is that the Rainmaster, they messed around at the residence of the kingdom of Yushi. So they basically messed around on the Rainmaster's territory and paid for it. Right? So it says the Rainmaster rarely comes out and only plants fields deep in the mountains. So there's a nickname, the old farmer in the deep mountains, Master Rain Huang. But who knew the moment the Rainmaster emerged, the descendant of Pei Ming was beaten to a pulp. He got dragged back to the heavens, thrown in front of the Heavenly Emperor, and got sentenced to exile. And Xie Lian says, why does this sound so familiar? So that's curious. So with the Rainmaster, it said he got beaten to a pulp. So with the Rainmaster, is Xie Lian is he remembering something with himself? I mean, we obviously know that he goes back to Junwu. He goes back to the Heavenly Emperor. He gets sentenced to exile. We know that happens to him with the curse shackle and everything. But I don't recall him getting beaten to a pulp by the Rainmaster. So is that something that will happen if we flash back? Or is that beaten to a pulp referring to him like suffering at the hands of the people of Shanla and Yong'an before he went back to the Heavenly Emperor? We don't know. I guess we'll find out, but I'm going to put a pin in that for now, right? And so then Pei Ming thought, well, exile, who cares? What could happen, while they're in the mortal realm? I'll just bring him back in another 100 years. But that's the thing. What he was saying is that once you fall, others take your place really quickly. There's more people that ascend. And so the longer you stay in the mortal realm, the more people forget you. Once a boundless future is wasted to no more. And little Pei came around and Pei Ming thought he had a second chance. And so basically the idea is that the longer you're in the mortal realm, the less powerful or a chance as a heavenly official you have. So he's afraid the same thing's going to happen to Pei Jr. that happened to his other descendant, that he's just going to become a human and there'll be no chance for ascension again. And honestly, I don't think Pei Jr. would care. I think as long as Pei Jr. was with Banyu, I don't think he'd care, right? Because he's been in the mortal realm for a long time, kind of posing as the one guy, right, that was leading Zhao, that was leading everybody around. So I don't think he'd care. But Xie Lian says that he was afraid for little Pei. And I like that Xie Lian's like, well, it makes sense why Pei Ming was trying to help out his descendant. His methods weren't quite right? Like framing a ghost for something she didn't do, not quite the way to go about it, right? And then Xie Lian says the human world. Staying too long in the mortal realm will always wear down one's spirit and will. Well, we just saw that in the last set of chapters. We just saw that is very true. Xie Lian descended to the human realm, and the longer he stayed there, the more things broke down and were not good. So that is a very true statement. And so then that's when Xie Lian remembers, oh yeah, the kid, Long Ying, the child. He's like an incredibly important individual, right? Too many things had happened at once. He'd forgotten about the child. And so the Windmaster says that Long Ying is at his place. Now, he makes a mention that Junwu's seen him. What that will amount to, I don't know. Why would MXTX tell us about Junwu seeing the kid unless it was going to become a thing? I'm a little worried for Long Ying, I'm not going to lie. Because Junwu didn't just greet Xie Lian back with open arms. Did not at all. He didn't greet him back with open arms. He seemed a little bit distant in these chapters. And I'm a little worried that Junwu maybe has discovered something with the Long Ying and he's trying to find a way to tell Xie Lian and it's not going to end well. I don't know. I get that vibe. I get a bad vibe. And that Junwu has seen him. So we at least need to touch base with Long Ying. Who's watching this kid? Nobody knows. And then Banyu's hanging out with the Rainmaster. So there's his two kids split up. But there's the Mid-Autumn Festival Banquet. And so Qi Rong is left locked up in the Puqi shrine. Now, the funny thing is, could Hawa Chong get past the barriers? I don't know. If Hua Chong got past the barriers and got the Qi Rong, that would be hilarious and terrifying. But maybe he can't because Xie Lian put them up. Maybe that is the case. Maybe there is something there to it. But regardless, we've put people on the chessboard in all different places. Pei Jr. is fine. He's just off on his own reflecting. Windmaster's like, go reflect, write poetry about the girl you love. You'll be fine. So he's off doing that. Qi Rong is stuck with this kid, seeing the errors of his ways in the Puqi shrine, having to stare at a picture of his cousin Crown Prince for who knows how long in the rest of this story. Banyu's with the Rainmaster. She seems kind of like a loner, introverted character, so it makes sense she's hanging out with a loner, introverted character too. I'm all about that. And then Long Ying's at the Windmaster's house, watching TV, playing Wii Sports, having a great time. But yeah, so they talk about this Blessings Lantern, the Battle of the Lanterns, that they can't be offered by just anyone. They're battling over the number of those Blessings Lanterns offered by devotees that they receive at their main temple. So Xie Lian is like, well, at the height of my prominence, as we saw in the flashback, I would easily win this. But he believes that with the lantern battle, he has no chance. He's like, I probably have no blessing lantern at all. What I'm hoping, and what would be amazing, is if Hua Chong has been building up and Hua Chong gets him like all these lanterns, and then Hua Chong is like, he did win. Haha. Like that would be amazing, but I'm not holding my breath that anything as spectacular as that would be happening. I am fully ready for Hua Chong to bust this party up. I don't know, especially in the next couple episodes, next set of chapters, if we have to deal with Xie Lian having a drink. I don't want Xie Lian to drink because he says he doesn't want to. And then having to watch the curtains. No, I don't want to have him to do that. We just saw him suffer for how many chapters? No. So I want Hua Chong to bust up this festival, rescue his man, and butterfly out of there. And Windmaster's like, I'll take care of your kid. So I don't know if that'll happen yet or not, though, right? We don't know. So he says it wasn't like the Rainmaster who'd been living a recluse for centuries. So we established like this. We established this, that Xie Lian's like, I can't skip out on the festival because he's like, I'm not like the Rainmaster who is a recluse and is powerful enough nobody will bother me. We have the Earth Master, who I'm going to use green for, like Qi Rong. We have the Earth Master, who have to go because they have a secret mission on hand. Secret mission. But we find out that the Windmaster also has the Earth Master sitting conveniently right next to them. Let me rephrase this. If I had a top 3 ships in this series so far, my top 3 ships are probably, obviously, Hua Chong and Xie Lian, and then it would be Pei Jr. and Banyu and Windmaster and Earthmaster. They're like my top 3 ships right now in the series. I do like the Windmaster and Earthmaster a lot. And then says the Water Master, who could do whatever they wanted. He wasn't anybody, but he felt like he needed to go. And if he wouldn't think of anything of it, even if he wouldn't think anything of it, it would make things difficult for Junwoo if people started to talk. So Xie Lian, he's trying still to be respectful. He's being respectful to Junwoo and doesn't want conflict. He's like, I don't want to make a scene. I don't want to get gossip started about me not being there. He's like, Junwoo entrusted me to go do some secret stuff for him, so I don't want to make it hard on him. Make people be like, oh, well, Junwoo, you're not going to pressure Xie Lian to come? It's like, I'll just go. We'll just do this. And so he's like, I'll be there. I love that Xie Lian tried to get Qi Rong out of the man's body, and Qi Rong is quite pleased that he's stuck there, so Xie Lian's like, fine, stay here and this baby will feed you, and just leaves him there, right? It's great. But they end up going there and talking about how the jaded capital was there. And they talk about all the stuff with the moon. Like, they can't see, like, the humans can see the moon, like, with your thumb if you press it up against the sky, but the moon's huge there. Like, I just imagine when the Donghua animates these chapters, I'm really disappointed because I feel like when the Donghua eventually, 20 years from now, gets to the set of the volume, it's going to be really beautiful. But there were no pictures in this set. And I was really sad because I wanted to see a picture of Xie Lian, the Windmaster. I wanted to see Pickles on top of Pei Ming. I had lots of hopes of what would happen. We got none of those things. Very frustrating. Very frustrating indeed, right? What do we do with this? So I felt a little bad about it, but Xie Lian's like, I like that Xie Lian didn't wear, at first I was like, oh, he's going to wear his divine robes that he wore like for the parade. I'm glad he doesn't because honestly, I feel like that's just going to drag up old memories and we don't need to see that. We've already seen it. So the fact that he keeps his like simple white cultivation robe and his bamboo hat, it's very Xie Lian. It's his iconic 800-year-old look, right? He's like, he felt conspicuous. But then of course, he runs into Feng Shen. Of all people, he runs into Feng Shen. And Feng Shen's like, why are you here by yourself? Like away from everybody. Like Xie Lian was trying to be the least conspicuous as possible. But the Windmaster's not having that. Windmaster's like, bestie, over here, sit beside me, please. We're in the popular corner. And Xie Lian's like, okay. You know, Xie Lian's like the introvert that gets invited to the party by the extrovert and has to sit beside them. And they're like sitting there with their cup of tea or whatever. And they're like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like one of those situations. Mm-hmm. But Windmaster, of course, sitting next to the Earthmaster, who's just sitting there eating. And then Junwoo was sitting silently with his hand supporting his cheek, just kind of like just not really having anything of it. I feel a little bit bad for Junwoo in this chapter because it seems like Junwoo, like he brings up the wine and passes it around. Junwoo doesn't get to play in any of the games. I feel a little bad for Junwoo. He doesn't get to participate in any of the games because they announced like who would win the lantern contest. Of course, it would be Junwoo because he's the main one they worship. Of course, so they're just competing for second place. So I feel bad for that. He doesn't get to play. He doesn't get to play any reindeer games with anybody else, and he has to sit there, maintain order, and just do his job. I mean, he seems to be fine with it, but I feel a little bad for him that he doesn't get to participate in his own party. At least not that much, right? And so Xie Lian tries to make conversation with Ming Yi, the Earthmaster, and Ming Yi's like, doesn't want to talk. I love the dynamic. It's like such a ship dynamic where you have the one partner that doesn't want to say anything. They just want to eat their food and like be in their own space. And their other partner is like the most extroverted, chatty, social butterfly. I love it. I like that character dynamic a lot. And it fits them perfectly, right? And so then we have that sitting next to him is a young man of 18 or 19. His nose tall, his brows deep, his raven hair slightly curly. And that's Chan Jingshen. So we're going to put him over here and just say Chan Jingshen. Yeah. Now, the thing about this, or they call him Qi Jing. Yeah. The thing about it is, when I took the character quiz, the two characters that were most like me were Hua Chong and this guy. I don't know what to make of that. Right? I don't know what to make of that at all. And it was like that, and like then Bon Yu was next. So I don't know what to make of that. He is a very mysterious character so far. He doesn't look like he wants to be there. Again, he kind of seems a little bit like Xie Lian. He doesn't want to be there, except he's like angry, angsty, edgelord version of Xie Lian. He really doesn't want to be there, and he really doesn't like the play that gets made. But the play was about him. That's the interesting thing. So I'm curious. And then we get to finally meet, the water tyrant, who is Shi Wudu, who is the water master, and looks pretty much like the Windmaster, only like it seems like a more masculine version of him, maybe. But I don't know. I hate to say that. I don't like to say that. No, he just seems like his expression indicates that he didn't care for anyone. Okay, he seems like the apathetic version maybe not even apathetic. What am I trying to say? The Watermaster seems like, because the Windmaster is very happy and wants to be popular, so they appear very jovial. And then the Watermaster just kind of seems like they're over it. They're like, I don't need you. Like, maybe not arrogant, maybe not apathetic, but just kind of like maybe I'm better than you and I know it sort of vibe. I don't know. It gives me prep vibes. He seems preppy, right? I don't know. And then we find out we have Ling Wen in their male form showing up, like, to be all powerful. I like the idea that we see Ling Wen as a man sitting there with Pei Ming and Xi Wudu. So we have, let me put this down here. We've got Pei Ming. I'm going to put down here that Pei Ming and Ling Wen and Xi Wudu, who's the Watermaster, they're like besties. I was not anticipating Ling Wen and Pei Ming being besties or potentially having a past. What? Hello. It's like when you find out that two of your coworkers have been dating and you're like, wait, when did this happen? What? How? What's going on? Tell me more. Like, that's what it seemed like, right? And they of course are in staunch denial. They're like, oh, it was eons ago. It was rumors. Nothing happened. Sure, nothing happened. Okay. And even Pei Ming's like, I'm being accused, of something that didn't happen. It's like, maybe y'all wanted it to happen, even if it didn't. Maybe. Who knows? I love that the Watermaster's just like giving them all kinds of hell, being like, really, how was it? Is that how it goes? Like, very bestie vibes, right? But they basically greeted each other and used all manners, forms, and ways to praise and compliment each other to the point where the Windmaster's like, they're so fake. The Windmaster's not a big fan of Ling Wen. I think the Windmaster likes Pei Ming the least, loves their brother, is maybe like, Ling Wen, whatever, but really doesn't like Pei Ming. It's kind of like, when your sibling has a friend you don't like and you're like, why are you friends with them? I feel like that's how the Windmaster is with Pei Ming, right? At least Pei Ming, most certainly. And so then they have the game of passing the drummed flower passing. Or basically the drum roll happens and you have to pass the cup around. It's like a game of hot potato, right? But when the cup gets to you, you have to drink the cup. And not only do you have to drink the cup, but then there's a play performed by a human down below in this little curtained area of something that's happened in your past. So it's basically like you get a surprise roasting by humanity of your past life if it lands on you, and there's just somebody waiting in the wings for every single person. So that sounds fun to an extent, unless, your past involved death and destruction and lots of traumatic events, right? Like, Pei Ming's dark and dirty past is that he had maybe sex with a coworker. Oh no, Xie Lian's like, I caused a genocide of my own people. There's a weight difference there, right? And who wants to see a play about that, right? So, yeah, the game is fine if you had nothing really wrong with your past, but in Xie Lian's case, we don't need to see this. And so we see the stuff with Ling Wen and Pei Ming. I like that happens. And then, of course, they get back at them by Xi Wudu, the Watermaster. The Watermaster kind of gets onto them, and they get karma back at him by having a play about him happen. And it's of people thinking that the water and Windmaster are like in this incestuous relationship, which they are not. So we can't say that Pei Ming and Ling Wen had sex or had a relationship, but you know what? If Pei Ming ended up with Ling Wen, the most calm and rational heavenly official, I'd kind of be all about it. Because Pei Ming's such a playboy and Ling Wen does not look like they are remotely affected by that. So I kind of would like it. I like our studious librarian who works too hard to have like a rock hard Adonis of a boyfriend. I'd be for it. I'd be all about it. Let's do that. But yeah, The Windmaster and the Watermaster, I don't think they have a thing. I keep wanting to... It's weird MXTX says the Rainmaster and the Watermaster be different because I want to associate them together. But what can we do? So... But then it gets passed over to Xishan. Now, the Windmaster says, oh, if you just donate 100,000 merits, they'll stop the play. But Qi Ying, who is Chon Yishan, there we go. I got the name wrong. I was like saying it. I spelled it wrong on Whiteboard Coon. It's Chong and it's Yishan. Yep, Yishan. And his name is Qi Ying. All right. So he's only like 18 or 19 seems. So he's a lot younger than I thought he was. But there's two people on the stage. Now, what's interesting is that they established that the person in the play was not him. So they say that there are two that stood up on the stage. One was a young general with curly hair like that of a stone lion's mane. And although it was exaggerated, he still looked heroically sprightly, so he must be portraying the young heavenly official, but it's not stated for sure. And the other one had pointy lips and monkey cheeks, and it was like a clown. And so basically the clown would turn around and make backstabbing movements and had the face of a villain. It performed with vigor and over-embellishment. It was a silly comedic play, but interestingly enough, the lower-ranked officials thought it was hilarious, but the higher-ranked ones all frowned, not finding it amusing whatsoever. And Qi Ying, basically the martial god of the West, was basically not happy about it and was going to go beat up his own worshippers. So it's established that he beats up his own worshippers. What? He beats up his own devotees. And Xie Lian is like, how does he keep them then if he beats them up all the time? What? How does that work? But then, you know, you have religions where it's like a god of fire and brimstone that punishes their people and the people keep worshiping them. So that's not too far-fetched, right? The God of the Old Testament was pretty brutal at times and people still worshipped him. So I can't say much. It happens, right? Xie Lian's just kind of baffled by it. But he goes down and breaks the cup. And they're like, what's with his highness? Why is he going to beat people up? And then someone's like, it says, Lord Chon is really immature. Everyone's just having fun. He doesn't know how to cooperate. Who hasn't been picked on? Did General Pei and Wen Jinjun just not get laughed at? It wasn't even him who was being made fun of. So why is he so angry? So, clearly, he was mad at the play. I think he was mad at the portrayal of the clown. Now, what that means? But we know from the plays so far that the plays we've been given have not been accurate. There's been something maybe inaccurate about each one of them. So maybe the clown that supposedly was backstabbing him, maybe there was more to it than that. Maybe it was his brother or a sibling or a relative or a friend that the play is saying was a villain, but he knows better, right? And it seems like the heavenly officials kind of know better too, which he's young, he just ascended, so the lower ranked deputies they're not in the know like the upper ranks are, and maybe they know, like maybe he is also like Xie Lian, maybe his kingdom has also fallen before, and the heavenly officials know it, the upper court does, and they're like, this isn't really funny when you think about it, but the lower court doesn't understand. So much mystery, right? And so Xie Lian, while he's listening to everything, is just like, oh, he's a kid, what's happening? And then he was just about to chat with the Windmaster, saying that he didn't want to blend in, and he's handed the cup. And that's where this ends. How dare you all? How dare you all? So, there's a lot to take in with this, right? We've established that the Watermaster is kind of like a posh, preppy version of the Windmaster. Maybe not as congenial, right? Windmaster, so glad they're back in the story. I love them. Qi Rong is being exiled into the Puqi shrine for now, being fed meat buns by a kid. Seems fitting. Banhua is hanging out with the recluse Rainmaster. Seems fitting. Pei Jr. still's out to protect her. Good on him. Pei Ming is interesting. May have had a thing with Ling Wen. I'm all for it. I'm here for it. Let's let this go down. And we meet Yijin. I'm super curious about him. But it seems to be that Yijin, the Windmaster, Pei Jr., and the Rainmaster all have connections somehow to Xie Lian. Maybe not the Rainmaster so much, but the Windmaster, Pei Jr., and Yijin all have connections to Xie Lian, right? Xie Lian's got friends in many places. Maybe not high places all the time, but many places, right? And also has connections in low places too. So my questions moving forward from here would be, obviously, is anybody going to save Xie Lian from having to do this cup game? Because we don't need to see this. Nobody does. So is the cup game going to continue? I don't know. What about Long Ying, the kid? So we know he's with the Windmaster. Junwoo seeing that kid, is that going to lead to anything? What's going to happen? What about Hua Chong? You know we want to see him. Where's that going to come up? I'm super curious about Yijin now and his whole connection to this. Lan Chanshu, where's he been? And then obviously the Rainmaster, and then the Earthmaster and the Watermaster. I want to see more of them, hopefully in chapters to come. But hopefully by then my cough and everything will be gone and I'll be back to 100%. I'm like at 90% now, and it feels that way. But man, how about that? How about these chapters? Right? I'm floored, y'all. I'm so floored. And I can't wait to hear your comments down below. Please, no spoiler hints or clues. I know there's going to be a Black Box Central on Discord after all this comes out, because I know y'all are like, hee. There's so much that's going to come out. But I love that MXTX just decided to come out in full force and was like, yeah, this last arc kind of sucked. It was hard. It was hard to read. But now we're going to get into some crazy stuff. So I hope you're ready. And I very much am. So next week, we're going to look at chapters 91, 92 at least, and see what goes on there. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I will be back very soon with more Heaven Officials Blessing. Bye.